because it's the silly, stupid, fascinating, weird, wonderful. They're my people, and more often than not, they're the geeky people as well.
I mentioned Betamax. For anybody older, that's the old version of a video cassette. Video cassette is an old version of a DVD. A DVD is not set on the cloud. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Faith and Geekery. You'll notice that Becca isn't here this evening, but tonight I am joined by the, I was about to say infamous, the friend of the show, our I want to say guest, but actually I think co-host for the evening, Tom. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just adjusting to the fact that I've got camera in front of me and you in front of me. but the screen that actually tells us what's happening is up there. So if I keep looking up there, that's because I'm looking at the screen. So the viewers know that that's what I'm doing. And
apologies, because I've got a screen down here, so I'm looking down towards comments and otherwise. And so Lydia has said, hey, and welcome. And yes, we are. It's a very strange thing because we are in person, you and I, and we are broadcasting in a lovely hotel, and this is because we ourselves are at the Methodist Conference, Indeed. And so that is meeting 20 minutes down the road from us, but this is where at least a quarter of the cohort of people or thereabouts are staying, and so so we are in foreigner climes of not being in our own homes and otherwise. So hopefully the sound is all right, folks. We've got we were saying about being like. Go on. Yeah, a bit like pundits, you know. And, here we are, folks. They're looking at the. So it is a bit of a strange feeling, but it is good to see you in person, and it is good to see folks online. Good evening, Lydia, as I've said. So, folks, what have we been up to? What have you been up to, Tom? What geekery have you been?
Well, I think we'll get onto the main bit of geekery that I probably would say I've been up to recently later on in the show, which is Methodist Conference. A very geeky activity for some of us. Other than that, while I've been at Methodist Conference, I've also been sitting around on my phone while other people have been doing business, working out army lists for a game I'm playing on Thursday during the day when I'm back home. So I have been working out army lists on my app while I've been sat paying very careful attention, of course, to all the business of conference.
Absolutely.
I hasten to tell people I'm not an official rep. I am sat in the public gallery, so I'm not kind of doing something that I really shouldn't be while I'm ignoring something I really should be. But so that's kind of being away from home, been away since I came up last Wednesday. So the usual kind of painting, playing, that kind of thing has not been available to me, but I have still been geeking away, building lists for.
So is that for Warhammer 40,000? Yeah.
So I've got a game on. Game on Thursday during the day because I'm taking the day off on Thursday, and one of the guys I know is available to play during the day, so
Fantastic.
We're going to just meet up and play. So, but it's a case of being able to get home and just grab them all off the shelf. So So how about you?
I was going to say I've not actually given it very much thought, which is annoying. I think I have been. What have I been doing? No, I don't think I have actually been that geeky. Actually, what I have been doing is making sure I've been watering my plants. And so we have sweet corn and some courgette plants and some tomato plants, and just been busy with kind of conference stuff, which actually I guess I've also been geeky with. I was live streaming an ordination on Sunday, and so I was busy at church in the morning, then jumped into the car and headed to a Batley Central Methodist Church, where I set up couple of these cameras, as well as another one, and set up this system, but basically in a church, which was really good and really really nice to be part of that and be geeky with wires as well.
And from a personal point of view, I know people in my own circuit were really glad that you were able to do that, because one of my colleagues was being ordained at that service, and we had folk at home who even up till kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, were saying, where's the link for are they definitely live streaming the ordination, because we can't get there? So it was really good to know that somebody was there live streaming.
And that was my fault why it wasn't out until Wednesday. But yes, so I've been geeky with wires, geeky with tech and bits and pieces. So that's been my week. Folks, do just let us know in the comments if you've been up to anything geeky that you're happy to share or that you've remembered to be geeky about, and please do let us know. I think we're going to move on to geeky news, and so we're going to have our little segment. So, I might not be able to see all of these things, but we have Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I think that was actually your recommendation for putting this, so please do speak into that.
Okay, so Games Workshop run a number of different gaming systems. Age of Sigmar is their big fantasy one, and as ever, Games Workshop every 3 years or so produce a new edition of each of their gaming things. We had a new 40k last year. This year it's Age of Sigmar's turn to get a new edition. It's on pre-order right now. This is not an advert, but it's on pre-order at the moment with the new launch box and things, so there's quite a lot of excitement around with the launch of that particular version.
Fantastic.
As ever, sees a few slight tweaks to the rules and a brand new launch box, which this time around features some new models for the Skaven, which are the rat people.
Oh, fantastic.
So some rather interesting looking models coming out.
I was going to say, I did explore the website and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know what's new and what isn't actually in all this lot. Is it the Heresy of Horus and...
so Horus Heresy stuff, that's 30,000 rather than 40,000. And that's kind of been around for about, I think that latest version's been around for about 2 years.
Cool.
And then it's where they took the setting of Warhammer 40,000, and as they worked out the lore, there was this big event that was like 10,000 years earlier, and then eventually they wrote rules for that, because that's kind of a civil war type setting.
Fantastic.
And things have done that, and then they've got other games around. But so in the moment, Games Workshop's big thing is the launch of Age of Sigmar 4.0.
Fantastic. Other in the news, unfortunately, it feels as if it's every week that we have mention that someone's passed away, but I thought I'd mention Thelma Barlow, who is famous for playing Mavis in Corrie, but she was also a dinner lady in Dinner Ladies, as well as, I'm feeling as if she starred in Sleepless in Seattle as well, or something along those lines, but she's died at the age of 94, which is sad, but hopefully a life well lived. Another thing to mention, right, I've got a little bit of an image here of a meeple, because there's been a bit of a controversy with meeples. I don't know if you know what meeples are, what game they're associated with originally.
Originally meeples.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's Carcassonne.
It is Carcassonne. Okay.
And basically they kind of produced those back in 2005 or early 2000s at the beginning of Carcassonne, and then but basically they've copyrighted the meeple, but they've never done anything with that copyright, so a lot of other games have come out also using the terminology of meeple and as little people meeple things, and it's just been this last 6 months that I don't know whether they've had an exchange of ownership or whether a lawyer has just woken up. No comment. But or possibilities, whatever. Please don't sue me. But basically, they're starting to issue cease and desist.
But didn't Nintendo use for their Wii? Didn't they use? I know with a different spelling, but didn't they use to refer to the digital versions of their PI? But I'm sure they called them meeples. Yeah, because we've got a Wii.
Yeah.
Games console with a
but but meeple double E, and I don't know if it's the shape or anyway. But they're doing like a cease and desist, which is just like, oh, that's a little bit. It just seems a little bit harsh to, after so long, after 20 years or so, to kind of suddenly kind of go, no, you shouldn't be using our thing, and it's just like, well,
if it's that long, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody says, well, actually, no, you can't stop me, and I'm going to go to court to say you've. I think
that would be interesting to see the ramifications of that. But I think if you're only a very small kind of, an independent creator of game or otherwise, then you're going to be a bit scared by a cease and desist letter. So you may have to wait for somebody a bit bigger to maybe stand up against. But again, if it's their design but it's just strange that the time has passed, that it would be a little bit strange.
So Hoover can no longer sue people for referring to vacuum cleaners as Hoovers because they didn't insist for so long that by the time they thought, oh, we better do something about this, courts just turned around and went, no, you've lost it.
Yeah, so, it's in the public domain sort of thing.
Yeah, so
Sam has put, I remember the me characters. Yeah, absolutely. I think we fired our Wii up a couple of, last year, in fact, last October, and I was quite surprised to see all these little meeples, and it was just like, oh yeah, he's now a teenager from that little baby, and that person's passed away. It's been many years. Anyway, let's move on. The other thing is just to say that there is another Resident Evil game in development. They have not said whether it's a sequel or otherwise, but I think it's something like, it's got the potential to be something like Resident Evil 7 or 9 or something like that. It is a very long.
Video games are not my area of expertise at all, but I'm very aware that there's been a few of them. I mean, I did though. It reminds me once, I did laugh once where I heard about there being, Final Fantasy 9 or something, and it's like, how do you get final in the title and then have however many editions?
I think there's at least Final Fantasy 13 or 14,
probably, but it's just
even longer now.
Final Fantasy. 13. It's like, but, yes, I don't know where Resident Evil's been around.
I think that is everything. I was going to mention. I think that's everything on Geeky News. So if there's nothing else to mention,
Resident Evil, and it says there direct to code is that a Resident Evil? And that's another game, and not because there were Resident Evil films as well.
Yes, there was. No, this is another game is in development from Capcom. So that'll be interesting to see what they do with that. So if there's nothing else to mention, that is the end of Geeky News. So that is the end of Geeky News, and we kind of move on to, it does say here, introduce our guest, our guest host or host. Welcome, Tom. Ours has been the tradition of the last couple of weeks. We are going to be moving away from the quiz this week to a quick fire. And so I'm going to put you on the spot, so apologies.
Try and be quick.
And Becca said last week that people were quite kind of, it had been mentioned in Discord and otherwise what you'd picked out. So please be nice to Tom in the Discord community and beyond. So this is basically a quick fire of, I can't remember if it's how many choices. I should have counted 21 choices, I think 20 choices. And basically you have one pass to kind of choose. If not, just go for the one that you would keep, just quick fire, see how it goes. So this is
we're keeping one pass. Okay.
Yeah. So Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Cats or dogs?
Cat.
Bridgerton or Pride and Prejudice?
Bridgerton.
Chips or curry?
Curry.
Disney or Doctor Who?
Disney.
Football or running?
Running.
Mario or Sonic?
Mario.
Cosplay or escape rooms?
Escape rooms.
Ice cream or chocolate?
Ice cream.
Lord of the Rings or Narnia?
Lord of the Rings.
Lego minifigures or painted miniatures?
Pass.
I knew you'd do it for that one. Pokemon or Transformers?
Transformers.
Spaghetti cream or custard?
Custard.
Board games or computer games?
Board games.
Cows or horses?
Cows.
Firefly or Red Dwarf?
Red Dwarf.
Tabletop roleplay games or tables?
The tables.
Spaghetti or noodles?
Isn't spaghetti a type of noodle? How do you want to do that?
Technically, that's it. Oh, okay,
So I'll take
change.
noodles because no, I have to take spaghetti because I love spaghetti carbonara.
Okay, I'll change that one for next time. Radio or podcasts?
Ooh. Radio.
Faith or geekery?
Geekery.
Fantastic. I would normally make a little note, but as I've been on the go and I've got it on my phone tonight, so I'll avoid having to pick you up on any of those, the ones that I remember anyway. But I thought I'd change a couple of those over since our last one about that whole radio versus podcast, because I thought previously I've done movies versus podcasts, and I think it's very easy to choose movies in that instance. But as radio and podcast are much more kind of similar.
It's interesting. I think nowadays I probably listen to more podcasts, but actually just for the pure nostalgia thing, I think I had to pick radio just because, radio has kept me going so many times in my life and such like that. Actually, if I have to drop one or keep one, then I'm going to keep radio. Well,
I'd seen a lovely, I'm sure it was like a meme, like a cartoon or something, where it was it was titled something like "In Memory of Radio" or something, and so there was like a little tombstone of loving memory of radio, kind of callously kind of murdered by movie. Oh no, what was it? Video. And so like the podcast person who stood over the grave, sort of saying, "I'll have my revenge" or something like that. And it was just these kind of little nod of kind of like the whole nod towards video killed the radio star, and kind of podcasts kind of making their kind of taking their revenge, which I thought was quite sweet. Radio. I'm just thinking, oh yeah. But I think the great thing about podcasts is that, and I say this as we do a podcast, I feel as if I'm slightly biased to all the 7 viewers, so listeners. But podcast, it does kind of highlight for us where we have that kind of tailored ability to offer something quite niche to people's desires, to their interest, to their geekery even, and therefore it does have a place, I think, whereas radio is that broad spectrum, and dare I say, I mean I'm a big fan of radio too, but because of budgeting and otherwise, I've found that that the broadcast is being limited, and it's no longer as localized stuff and bits and pieces for local radio, and actually I kind of go, gosh, it almost feels as if it is kind of limited and limiting. And actually, a podcast gives you the freedom to tailor it much more. Anyway, so I didn't mean to go off on that tangent.
It's interesting because what I reflect on is with the coming of digital, actually it has given radio an ability to tighten down. So we listen a lot in our household to Absolute Radio, commercial radio station. Which we like a lot just because of the kind of music that they happen to play. But in the background, there's Absolute Radio, but then there's Absolute Radio Classic Rock, and there's Absolute Radio 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and noughties and 10s and new. So that one, what was station, now big media group that also owns Planet Rock and I think Greatest Hits Radio and several others, can now, because of digital and the DAB platform and the fact that they're broadcasting through the internet as well and through apps, can actually offer quite a tight spectrum of what they offer. So with the technology now that you can listen to the same breakfast show with the same breakfast show hosts on all of those channels, the music on each of them will be different.
Wow.
And they do the same for their drive time show as well. So at breakfast and drive time, they broadcast the same show but with different playlists on each of those stations.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And that's quite tailored
and how they do it and able to announce some of the, so occasionally you listen and you kind of get, so if you're listening on such, you've just heard this, and if you're listening on such,
I was going to say, I wondered how they would tailor it into that,
but it is when they started doing it. It was like radio has made use of the technology to find ways of actually offering something much more tailored than previously.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating.
So it is interesting.
So well, thank you for giving us a quick fire on that, and very interesting. Sorry to go off on that subject, but tonight we are talking about Methodist Conference. And for those people who have been to Methodist Conference or missing out on Methodist Conference, I'm aware of some of you. Bless you. Hope you're feeling better. But we're not here to talk about the business. We're not here to kind of gossip about Methodist Conference. I'm fairly sure we'll get into trouble. But I think it's the overall, and again, just as our podcast is about that faith and geekiness, and actually I'm aware that this is quite a niche geekiness. However, it is a geekiness amongst the Methodist denomination of conferring, of gathering together, the representation for the Methodist Church, which is, it's basically, I guess, for people on the outside of Methodism, which is a vast number. That conference is a annual gathering where representatives from across all the districts of the Methodist Church of Great Britain and World Methodists and Channel Islands, I'm sure, and various kind of places gather to confer, to talk through the items that have been presented, and to come to a consensus over them. Sorry, could you define that better?
Yeah. So and I kind of it's weird. In some ways, you might. I mean, so something that people might refer to it is kind of like, oh, well, it's kind of the Parliament of the British Methodist Church. But I would probably want to avoid the term Parliament, because that comes with its own set of kind of assumptions. And we call it a conference because it is where we confer together as we make decisions. From the faith point of view, we say that we're conferring with the Holy Spirit to come to a mind. Now, we do it democratically. We do it by voting. And I would, I'm conscious that actually using the term consensus, thinking that I'm also now on General Assembly of the URC, where they very particularly focus on consensus rather than voting, or voting in a different way, I should say. But so it's where the British Methodist Church ultimately sets its national policies, its national strategies, its rules and its regulations. But it is more than that. It's an opportunity for people to come around, and people like me who sometimes get referred to as Methodist geek, conference geeks, come, even though we're not actually elected reps to the conference, but we come to be here because we enjoy being in the environment, we enjoy seeing the people, we enjoy those conversations that you get to have.
And I think I'd say that the conference, and I'm just aware of the words that we've been using, in some respects it is about kind of technical details of things, so basically of how a church operates, of how committees are built up and all this kind of stuff, but it's also a opportunity for the church to speak out against injustice, to kind of make sure that they're on the right path regarding mission and outreach, and so it's not just kind of I don't want to say
so if you just think about today, and not gossiping about the business, but if you just think about some of the things that conference did today, in the things that we did today, we agreed changes to standing orders, that's our rules and regulations, and some very nitty-gritty technical changes to some of the kind of background rules and regulations that we need to use in order to be legal and such. So we did some of that, but we also heard about how we make sure as churches that we make sure that we're offering worthwhile participation and engagement to young people, and also listen to them and what they're thinking and feeling about faith and about the world. And we also at one point dealt with some folk from the conference highlighting the fact that the Methodist Church is committed to justice seeking in the world, and yet at the same time, for a variety of reasons, won't go into, it's very technical when we're not doing the business of the conference itself, reflecting on how we can be better at ensuring that with a commitment to fair trade, we actually ensure that conference itself meets in places where there's a commitment to fair trade. So all of those things all happen in Methodist Conference, from the very nitty-gritty kind of navel-gazing rules and regulation stuff to the how we work more generally, to the prophetic speaking to the world, and all of that all happens in conference.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for navigating that. Because again, we're not intentionally wanting to talk about the details of the day, because that isn't the place. But it is about this geekiness of being able to gather. And I'm not a representative either, and therefore I am coming here on my own steam. It's just down the road for me, so it's helped. This year has been very straightforward. But it is a place where I also find that there is that fellowship.
Yeah.
I will say though, it does feel as if it's like I imagine what the Olympic Village feels like, of when kind of the Olympics descend on location, where suddenly, and especially like downstairs in this hotel, where suddenly the majority of people have got dog collars. There's also lay representatives as well, but I think I mentioned the dog collars because it's a very visual indicator of the religious people are in town, because a lot of people are visibly here kind of collared up, and so it does feel a little bit quirky, and you kind of you've seen whether people have got lanyards. I guess that's another visual clue as well, but you're just kind of looking around going, I wonder how many Methodists are here in this hotel, or how many, and kind of as you get closer to the venue, you're like going, oh gosh, and so there is a real kind of point of fellowship here, and there are various kind of organisations and charities that are kind of got like a little marketplace that share these things as well. And so I think it is a real moment for this kind of fellowship and being community, especially when we are kind of brought together from all across the kind of Great Britain and beyond. But I do also feel that it could feel a little bit cliquey and a little bit kind of like an in-club.
Absolutely, there's a real, and even amongst those who are here, there are there's, and this is you can always, in all kind of structures of organisation, you're always going to get the powers that be structures, but not even outside of that. The fact that somebody like me, and I hold my hand up to being a complete Methodist geek, I can be looking around at conference where everybody's wearing their lanyard, and I'll be like, oh, what colour lanyard have they got? Are they here as a rep? Are they, because the different colours represent things? So, or are they here as an ordinand? Are they here as a on their own expense? Are they here as a rep? Are they here as an official guest? Are they here as an exhibitor? All of these different, so there's that kind of, even within, there's that kind of sense of, well, I know exactly how this works, and I can kind of spot who's doing what and things. Whereas somebody like my circuit steward, who's here as a rep, this is her second time here as a rep, but very much kind of like still a bit kind of starstruck, kind of like, oh, what's going on? But it's interesting you talk about, because you mentioned about cosplay and things on one of the quickfires, which was not the one I picked, but. I was thinking about Comic-Con, because I'm pretty sure the bit of con in Comic-Con come from a shortening of conference.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing. And I imagine that I've not been to a Comic-Con, but I imagine if you go, there will be those people who are utterly kind of like they know exactly what's going on and the thing. But if I went, even as somebody who's quite familiar with the general kind of genre, I would be kind of like completely like, what's going on next, and what's this, and probably freaking out from all the people in cosplay, because one of the reasons I didn't pick it is because it's not really. It sometimes freaks me out.
You see, I feel as if you've kind of thrown a grenade into here now, because I'm imagining what would Methodist Conference look like if it actively encouraged cosplaying, but then it would just be like 100 people as like John Wesley, 100 people as Jesus, and then Susanna Wesley.
When we have the opening of conference and all of the podium party all walk in their cassocks and their preaching bands, that's pretty much cosplay.
I could not comment. But okay. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting, because I kind of turn up and I look in on it, I feel as if I'm an outsider in it,
Right.
because I kind of look through the order papers and the business that I go through, and I'm just not fast enough to be on my feet knowing about where the notices of emotion. Thank you. Notices of emotions are, and all this kind of stuff, and it I guess I could almost kind of see it could be very kind of like, oh, it's very legalistic about the dots and the I's and otherwise, and I'm there kind of going, well, my notice of emotion would have failed just because due to the grammar, let alone the kind of, but I can definitely see why you do need that sort of geek to be able to, because this is the stuff that is kind of discussed here and it is decided, and then once it has kind of been, or if it's been accepted, the report's been accepted, or the whatever has been accepted, it then kind of is in the minutes of conference, and then that kind of gets, I want to say, disseminated down to kind of the districts, and then it gets disseminated down to the circuit level, and hopefully it gets disseminated down all the way down to church level if it's relevant, and if it's, hopefully it always, but then this is how it kind of filters down and kind of has hopefully an impact on the local so I've just seen the comment coming up on the local church, and so hopefully it is an active voice rather than just being this kind of stuffy thing that happens over there by people we don't know. Actually, it should be representational, so it's not us and them, it's people who are passionately, who have kind of been voted in, who are trying to find God in this busy world, and is trying to kind of bring it home and kind of apply it to local life. I'm now going to bring up Gareth's comment, which made me chuckle. It's a generic bearded male wearing a bedsheet covers a multitude of biblical characters. Yes, I feel as if holding a staff maybe as well. So thank you, Gareth, for that image.
There's a whole host of comments I could make about actual people at but I won't. But it's funny that being an outsider, as someone who very much feels like an insider, even though I'm not actually a rep this year, but nationally I sit on the committee that writes the standing orders that then get agreed, and I've been on the business committee of the conference. And very much feels like an insider. I work hard to spend time, so I open myself up, and then this year I have helped people write notices of motion with no comment on whether I agreed with that particular notice of motion, but because they were passionate about that subject, they didn't quite understand how they needed to get it written, so I helped them write it because I do understand it. But at the same time, there are times in my ministry on the ground in circuit, and how much of this should I admit, but I will admit it, where I feel like the outsider. But then but the reason I come to conference every year is because conference is the bit of the life of the church where I feel like an insider.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the bit that I get, and therefore I do this every year in order to be able to spend the rest of the year being in a situation where I'm not sure I do get it all the time, but at least I have this bit to anchor me. But because of that, it means I absolutely get when it happens the other way around, when somebody really loves life in the church on the ground, but then for one reason or other comes to conference because they're passionate about one thing, or because somebody said, the conference needs to hear your voice, so they come, and then they're just like, what is this? And I hope that I can reach across in that situation and say, okay, I get that you don't get it. Let me help you at least have your voice heard, even if you're going to come for 3 years, never get it, and leave again. At least your voice will have been heard. And I've enabled that as somebody who does get it and really loves it and really enjoys it and geeks out about. We have not had this year yet, and I hope we don't, because we're rushing through the business rushing is the wrong word. We're getting through the business at a good pace. But there comes that moment some years where we have to put a vote on not putting the vote. Really geeky mechanism that most people will, even as I say it, I can see people watching the screen going, what? What is that? How is that even a procedural thing to have a vote and not put the vote? And there are some of us though, when it happens, get really excited. Oh, we've got the vote. Where's my bingo card? Where's my bingo card? But so I get really excited about that myself. But I understand that lots of people don't. And I hope that I'm open enough to say, okay, this is my geekiness. I hope it serves the church well.
Yeah.
But I also hope that I'm not so geeky that I think everybody else has to be that way inclined.
Yeah.
Just like I don't think everybody has to play, tabletop war games.
Yeah. And yeah, I hope it, because I know what I can see is that it is a vehicle for things to blossom and flourish through a church that is facing a lot of challenge and a lot of kind of realities of being a denomination, a small denomination in the 21st century, facing lots of kind of injustices across the world, lots of interesting politics and cultures, and therefore this is the one place where everyone is in the same place, having to kind of share those agendas, those passions, those concerns, and we've got to kind of come to a consensus, and therefore it can be a challenge. But I can and so I'm really blessed where I'm kind of going, you know what, this isn't my bag, this isn't my kind of my gifting, but I'm really glad that there are people here that it is, and it sometimes feels that I should get the popcorn out. And we're like going to go, oh my gosh,
just pass it around.
It's not my thing, but oh my gosh, it's like, it is nice to be kind of not a representative to kind of go, wow, I wonder how this is going to go. But it is just, even when things don't go where expected, or even when kind of hard decisions are made, you're then kind of going, gosh, this is done in such a gracious way. And just as you say that you kind of wouldn't want to kind of label it a parliament because we have baggage associated with that, actually it is, and over the last few years, I won't specify exactly what, but there have been some real kind of moments where we're thinking, where is this going? And how is this going to come to a decision? And actually, prayerfully and carefully and full of grace and the Spirit, you kind of go, oh gosh, we've come to a decision on that, and that has been give and take on a number of levels, and actually, wow, God is really in this place, even in this geekiness, which that sounds as if it's a negative thing, and it shouldn't be, but it's just like a real kind of, I guess, awe, really, to say, wow, God can even be in this kind of stuff, which for some it could be so dry and just be another committee, and Methodists are known for their committees.
Absolutely.
But I think the conference is one where it's done really well, but again, I could see how that, I guess it's the culture thing, and I think it's that kind of like people seeing into it, because you can watch this on, you can watch the conference on live stream, on streaming, and unless it's a closed session, but you just type into Google or other search engines, just Methodist Conference 2024, and you can kind of see the live feed. But it's very interesting to see how we can kind of come to these decisions and other matters. But I've realised it's not everyone's bag, but you can sort of see, I guess there's this transparency where you can see people gathering and conferring rather than it being behind the curtain, as it were, or otherwise. And so it's really quite humbling to see it, and you can see that kind of transparency and people really passionately representing their corner, their whatever, and so I think it is humbling to see, and you can kind of see God in it, which is good.
You'd hope, wouldn't you? But it does. It feels. I know. I hear feedback from people who've been to the similar events of other denominations, whether other Methodist churches overseas or to other denominations, and sometimes people feedback, wow, actually it feels even less parliamentary and more kind of spirit-filled or worshipful in other settings. But I also think that compared to some settings, including some other Methodist settings, conference does feel like it's geeky in the sense of it has its rules and its regulations, and it has its ways of doing things, and it has its particular, many of which exist because we didn't always do it that way, and we discovered not doing it that way that we made some very bad mistakes, and therefore we've introduced other ways of doing it. But but it is prayerfully held. I think I watched it on live stream a couple of times before I was ordained, but then when I was ordained, we always make sure that those who are being ordained have the opportunity. It's not required to take it up, but all ordinands are given the opportunity as guests to stay for the whole week of conference, should they so wish. And I certainly made sure that I did when I was ordained. And the live, and having watched it previously on the live stream, was blown away actually by even how much more of a feel that is in the room. That the president and the vice president who are chairing it, and their assistants from the secretary of conference and the assistant secretary and others, is deeply prayerful.
Yeah.
You know, they are very conscious that while we're having a debate using rules of debate, we're actually having a Christian conversation about matters of faith, even when they're about, you know, whether you have to do something in one way or another. It's still a matter of faith, and therefore it's held in prayer, not just the episodes of actual official worship at the beginning and the end, and the Holy Communion service on a Wednesday, or the incredibly often mind-blowingly amazing opportunity to worship with several hundred other people on a Sunday, on the Sunday morning at conference worship. But today, just thinking back again, without the specifics of the business, but moments where whoever was in the chair says, okay, no, we've talked about this. This is a matter that means a huge amount to people's lives in the church and out of the church. And before we go any further, we're going to take this moment and we're going to pause and we're going to actually say to God, take what we've decided, take what we've talked about, take the conversations, acknowledge that we've had to say things to each other that have been difficult for other people to hear. We're going to hold those people before you, and we're going to pray that you're in. We know that you're in it. We're going to pray that you work through it, and therefore, while it is very can be very geeky, I am always blessed to be reminded when I come to conference of how prayerful and held in grace it is, and that it is church.
Yeah,
it might be. Especially during the second half, business might be a committee in some ways. Yeah. But it is absolutely church.
Yeah. It's interesting. You touched upon a couple of bits, which, and I guess we have also mentioned. So I think what we should mention is that conference. It starts off with presbyteral session where the presbyters gather, so the collared, the ordained kind of people gather and share some input into what is going to be talked about, if there's some sensitivities or just from a very kind of ordained perspective, if there's some nuance that we can kind of contribute to that kind of to the conversation that's happening later on. We then have kind of a big kind of conference worship, I'm trying to get this right, order, and then we have the president of
so we have presbyteral session for kind of day and a half, and then we have what we tend to refer to as the opening weekend, which starts Saturday afternoon, and we have the election of the new president and vice president. It's an odd election, always a bit of a joke, there's a bit of an odd election because there's only one candidate in each category, so we can do it by standing vote, because actually the designation of who they're going to be happens the year before. So we have the election of the president and vice president, and we get addresses from both of them. So
as in a little talk, not like where they live. I like to live here.
No breach of GDPR occurs. So they give. They give addresses.
That's when they take on their presidency and vice presidency, and that's like the official handing over ceremony, isn't it? And as you say, they were voted on the previous year, so they're kind of waiting the wings for a year in shadow.
A year preparing in shadow,
and then so they come up with their kind of like, and I guess it's their subject, their passion, maybe, that they then take, they carry into the year.
With them. Normally, and that theme needs to be known quite soon after they were originally delegated, because there are certain publishing things that it impacts. So they get together shortly after they've been kind of designated and come up with a theme, and then that theme becomes kind of in their two talks. They address that theme and why it's important to them, why they came up with it, as well as the opportunity, of course, to thank people who've supported them and got them to that point.
It kind of gives them a framework for their year ahead, because that's how long as a president.
As president and vice president, people are always Really, it is there are powers that come with it, some significant powers, but for majority of the Methodist Church, the president and the vice president is a kind of head of state role.
Yeah.
It's a figurehead role.
Yeah.
And it is 1 year,
Yeah.
and then you're the
And then they pass it on.
ex-president.
Yeah.
And they pass it on. So they offer their theme. We
That's
normally
it.
do a couple of bits of formal business on the Saturday afternoon as well. We generally accept the report from the.
Lydia's put it's a representative role and a status. It's a role, not a status, and she's also
Yeah.
put they are called to serve for a year, not given power.
Although there are powers that come with it, we sometimes forget that. I mean, they do have the power to station people between conferences, and I know people who have been stationed by presidential fiat. So we shouldn't completely forget that. But in principle, it's a
representative role.
It's a role of service, and being a figurehead and being somebody who represents the church, both to other churches and to itself. We do a couple of bits of business. We have to present bits of business that don't then get voted on. And then Sunday we get conference worship.
Conference worship, which is kind of a very good standard, very high standard of people gathering and worshipping together with the conference worship band, worship group, and then the ordinands are received. Now, which way around is it? Are they received into full connection in the morning, and then they go to their places of ordination where they are ordained to be ministers, to be deacons, presbyters, to be ministers, and that's a real celebration. And you get that you get that affirmation of your call, that you are through all the hoops that you've jumped through for the 2 years of probation or longer or whatever. You finally get people shout out, declare very loudly, they are worthy, which is a real kind of powerful moment of just finally this person is ordained into that role pretty much for life, and that's kind of real humbling moment, and to be able to be present, to watch that, to be involved in that is real kind of moment, and then it kind of dare I say the rest of the time fits into more of this committee style. We forgot to mention we also have a memorial service, don't we, on the Friday?
Yes, on the Friday, just before lunch, so that guests who've been invited, who family of. So that's a thanksgiving, a remembering and a giving thanks for ordained presbyters who have died in the past year. And their names are all read out. It's a service which has had pretty much the same format for a good number of years. And the names of every presbyter who has died is read out. And that list can be edited right up to the day. Sorry,
I forgot that bit. But then we go back into the kind of it's more of the information. More of the committee stuff. The orders of what was it?
The order papers.
Order papers and notice of emotion and all that.
The visual representative of that is that. So Saturday and Sunday, it's very much an auditorium feel. Everybody's just sat in standard auditorium. If you went to see a play, if you went to see a stand-up comic, if you went to see anything like that, going into a cinema, we all know what an auditorium looks like. There's a stage at the front and all the seating, and that Saturday and Sunday, auditorium worship, etc. You leave on the Sunday, you come back on the Monday, and overnight the room has been transformed into this space where there are long tables, people are all sat at tables, there's paperwork on everybody's desk that's been laid out by the staff, and suddenly you shift overnight from the Sunday where you've been in this auditorium worship to Monday morning, and it's a business meeting with paperwork and desks and such like. And like I say, it's still held in a deeply reverential and prayerful manner, but that visual, I remember being struck. The first year I was a rep to conference, it didn't work quite the same way because we'd done worship in one space, we'd done the weekend in one space, then we moved into a completely separate hall. But I remember for and actually would have been the year that I was ordained, because I was up on the stage looking across this auditorium on the Sunday morning, and then I came down from my room in the hotel into the conference hall on the Monday morning, and suddenly the room was just completely different. It's like, oh, now we're here for something very different. Same thing, same event, same people up at the table, at the front, president and vice president and secretary, but very different feel, very different visual, and that that gives that visual thing of it's all conference, but the kind of what you're doing as part of conference visually changes as you hit the Monday.
And then we should mention then. Again, there's a lot of fellowship going around, and on a Tuesday night there is fringe events as well. So you kind of have a bit more of like a breakaway moment, and otherwise, and that's why Becca can't be with us tonight.
Yeah, she's got a fringe event.
She's got a fringe event. Who I will mention because James is a friend of the show. He pinched her in advance, so he kind of got in. James asked her to be involved with one of the fringe events, and I was like, "Oh, do you not know it's Faith and Geekery?" He's like, "Yep, I do." But it was really important, and we support that obviously. So we wish James well, and we hope that Becca has had fun this evening. So I think it is just thank you folks for those. If you've not been interested in Methodist Conference, you're thinking what on earth, thank you for bearing with us, and it's just kind of an interesting point of very niche geekiness and faithiness, and that's why we kind of just wanted to address it here and share and just like lift that curtain a little bit more to what goes on, because actually even kind of when I was younger, kind of going to church, I didn't actually know very much about it. No. It was just one of those things that happened somewhere. And actually, I lived in a rural community where actually a lot of stuff didn't really filter through very much. I'm sure it's better now. So it's just one of those interesting things where I thought, you know what, it won't suit everybody, but I think it's interesting to share some of the inner workings of a church denomination, and when it does it right, when it does it wrong, when it's somewhere in between. I thought it was just a really interesting subject. So thank you for those who suggested it. I also just want to briefly say thank you to everybody who helps and contributes to the Methodist Conference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's in Leeds, I'm also aware there's a lot of local representatives, and so people have given up their free time to do this sort of stuff, but also very aware of all the connectional team and all the representatives, all the kind of people who take part, even the production folks. I'll better not mention names because I'll miss people out, but even everything from one random geekiness that I really liked is that the podiums change height. And so for whoever's comes, it kind of automatically comes down and it lifts and goes down. And a person's had to think about that, and a person operates that, which is just fantastic. Sorry, random geekiness, but it was just like, it was really sweet just to notice that effort and thought has gone into that. So again, just noticeable thanks to everybody who's taken part in it, because it's been really appreciated to facilitate these sort of things. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Lydia, I knew that you'd been. Lydia was meant to be at conference, but due to COVID, has had to miss it. So I hope you're feeling better soon, Lydia. Absolutely. So. And again, this is another opportunity just to share and gather and talk about this kind of stuff. We're going to come to an end in a minute. We haven't got anything from Geeky Gallery. No one posted anything last week or otherwise. Unless it's just one of those things. But it's an opportunity just to mention it, and just to kind of encourage people that if you've not been part of the Discord community yet, then do kind of jump on there. It's an inoffensive app. You can just kind of join our Discord, and there's a few kind of subjects where you can share into them. One of them is the Geeky Gallery, just to share a picture, so we'll then kind of post it up. But you can also just chat about various things, past podcasts and streams, or just general stuff that you can kind of share about, and just be part of the community there. And it's a small congregation. Other profession in my head now. It's a small kind of group, but hopefully it's a lovely community where we can talk about things and just keep it uplifting and kind of support one another in our geekiness, in our faithiness-ish, sort of stuff. I was going to mention with the whole geekiness at the very beginning. Today is our 10th anniversary for the other project that I've really been involved with. It's Methodist Online, which is a Facebook community, and it's 10 years, and that started off really small, and I guess it's just made me reflect on what we hope to do with Faith and Geekery. So folks, please do get involved, do be a voice, do kind of share with us about kind of feedback and be part of the community if this helps you, or suggest kind of themes, or volunteer to be a guest, or that kind of thing, just to be, this is your thing as well as mine, and it's just real opportunity and these things can grow and develop and change, and for whilst we can, and the energy that we have, please do kind of support us and lean into us, and we'll hopefully be here for you.
The geekiness is a broad geek. I think, if anything, talking about the conference today just shows how broad we understand geekiness to be. That's one kind, if we can be geeky about the Methodist Church, then we can be geeky about pretty much anything. It's the attitude we bring to it. So,
Absolutely. So I think that is pretty much everything for this evening. Thank you, Tom, for giving up your Tuesday evening. It has been a pleasure. It has been good to be talking about stuff. Thank you, folks, for commenting. And this will be put up onto podcast as and when I can do it this evening, hopefully. And folks, thank you for being part of our conversation this evening. Oh, I've got a comment just before we go. Oh, Lydia's saying thank you as well. Thank you. Well. And thank you, Lydia. And thank you, folks. I hope you have a good week off whenever we see you next. And goodbye, folks. Geek long and prosper.